The first recorded use of an auxiliary power unit was on a four-winged interceptor aircraft in the Great War in 1916. The aircraft, called the Nighthawk, was designed and built by the owner of the firm that would eventually become Supermarine, the builders of the Spitfire. A gasoline-fueled piston engine was used in this particular instance. However, because aircraft in general, and commercial aircraft in particular, began to need more powerful electrical and hydraulic supplies and air conditioning facilities to service them while they were on the ground with their engines shut down, the auxiliary power unit, which was to satisfy these requirements, became more sophisticated. Aircraft manufacturers and operators also recognized the fact that because it had an auxiliary power unit, it also meant that the aircraft was no longer dependent on expensive ground support equipment. The auxiliary power unit can provide the necessary power for operation of an aircraft's electrical, hydraulic, and pneumatic systems. While earlier aircraft used the piston engine to drive their auxiliary power units, it soon became obvious that the gas turbine engine was safer, lighter, quieter, and more reliable. The gas turbine engine auxiliary power unit uses AVTUR, which is the same fuel as the main engines use, so the problem of fuel storage and fuel management systems is minimized. The type of gas turbine engine normally used to drive auxiliary power units is a turboshaft engine with a free turbine. The free turbine, which is designed to run at a constant speed, drives the accessories via a gearbox. The fact that the free turbine runs at a constant speed ensures that the auxiliary power unit's generator maintains a constant frequency without the need for an additional constant speed drive unit. Some aircraft use air bled from the auxiliary power unit's compressor to power the aircraft's pneumatic system, but it's also common for the free turbine to drive a separate load compressor to supply bleed air. The auxiliary power unit is normally positioned in the tail of the aircraft, where its operation will not harm personnel working in proximity to the aircraft. The auxiliary power unit of modern aircraft can be operated in the air, thus providing a backup source of power to the aircraft systems in the event of an engine failure. This ability to operate while airborne has become more important with the introduction of twin-engine aircraft, which are now flying long-haul routes under extended twin operations (ETOPS) regulations. Auxiliary power units fitted to ETOPS aircraft must be extremely reliable, as they are used in place of the failed engine to supply backup electrical and pneumatic power during single-engine operations. While other auxiliary power units may or may not have the ability to be started while the aircraft is in flight, ETOPS-compliant auxiliary power units must be capable of being started at all altitudes. If such auxiliary power units malfunction, the aircraft cannot be released for ETOPS flight and must fly a longer route. While, for example, the L-1011 TriStar can start its auxiliary power unit up to 25,000 feet and has the capability of delivering power up to 31,000 feet, the Allied Signal auxiliary power unit, which is fitted in some Boeing 737 aircraft, has a 41,000-foot start capability and can deliver 66 kVA at this altitude. If the aircraft descends to 31,000 feet, that same auxiliary power unit can deliver 90 kVA. Other 737 aircraft may have Garrett or Sunstrand auxiliary power units fitted. These units have a maximum recommended start altitude of 25,000 feet and are only rated at 55 kVA. These two auxiliary power unit control panels from the Boeing 767 and the Airbus A320 aircraft illustrate that the pilot has very little control or indication of what's happening on the auxiliary power units fitted to modern aircraft. On older aircraft, such as the earlier Boeing 737 series, the auxiliary power unit panels incorporate load meters and EGT gauges, as well as indicator lights which warn of low oil quantity, low oil pressure, high oil temperature and overspeed. The auxiliary power unit's turboshaft engine is started by an electric starter motor powered from the aircraft battery, although some later model aircraft have a dedicated auxiliary power unit battery to preserve the aircraft batteries. When the auxiliary power unit is started, the RPM and EGT must be allowed to stabilize before it's used to power the aircraft systems. It is possible on older aircraft to see the RPM and EGT gauges. On more modern aircraft where gauges are not available, it may be possible to hear the APU RPM stabilize. The stabilization of the EGT should follow that very closely. The auxiliary power unit may not be able to completely power all of the aircraft systems. For instance, on some aircraft, the galley power will be load shed automatically if the auxiliary power unit load reaches a maximum value. Additionally, if the auxiliary power unit EGT reaches a predetermined figure, then the bleed air valve will begin to close, reducing the ability of the auxiliary power unit to supply the pneumatic system. It's usual for the auxiliary power unit to be operated for a cooling period of at least 1 minute with no pneumatic load prior to shutdown. The auxiliary power unit will automatically shut down for the following reasons: fire, low oil pressure, high oil temperature, overspeed. The auxiliary power unit has only one fire bottle, which uses Freon, stored at a pressure of approximately 800 psi, as the extinguishant. Operation of the auxiliary power unit fire handle passes an electrical supply through a cartridge, which ruptures a diaphragm in the outlet of the bottle. When the diaphragm breaks, the internal pressure forces the extinguishant into the auxiliary power unit shroud, where it suffocates the fire. The indication that the cartridge has fired is given by the displacement of a yellow disc, which is positioned on the side of the aircraft, where it can be checked during the walk-round inspection. The red disc alongside the yellow disc will become displaced if the fire bottle has become too hot or its internal pressure has become too high.